Hey, this is Marisa, and I'm out here in front of my grandmother's house in central Wisconsin. And I thought there's no better place for me to record a video book review on this book, Belong, which is all about finding your people, creating community, and living a more connected life. Because I've got to admit, and this is a little vulnerable, that there are a few places in the world where I feel I belong less than here in Wisconsin. Because back in the 60s, my dad was a young man, and he made the fateful decision to leave home, to leave his family behind and set out to the world, to set out to Thailand where he met my mom. And it's like the family took a detour. Now, one generation later, my three cousins have lived there their entire lives, and me and my brother have traveled the world and lived very, very different lives. So when I come back here, a lot of times it feels more foreign than going to an entirely different country for me, because these people are my own, and yet we're so different. We've had such a different background. And so the reason why it was so touching for me to read this book, and to read this book in particular here, is because it allowed me to really think about and start to heal some of my belonging wounds. And I think every single person on this planet has a belonging wound. And I wanted to read the definition that Radha Agrawal, writer of this book, has of the word belonging and what it means to belong. And she defines belonging as a feeling of deep relatedness and acceptance, a feeling of I would rather be here than anywhere else. And here's the thing. Sometimes I don't feel related or accepted here in this family because I'm different, I look different, I talk different, I'm different. And a lot of times when I'm here, I love it for a few days, it's beautiful. But it's not necessarily my home, it's not the place that I chose. And that gets me to my first takeaway for this book. And that takeaway is that there's two kinds of family, two kinds of tribe. One is your given tribe and your given family. And two is your chosen tribe and your chosen family. And for so many of us, there comes a point in time where the tribe that we were given as children, the family that we were given as children, doesn't really feel like the place where we belong. It doesn't feel like our family. It's not the one that nourishes and supports us and allows us to create that level of community that we desire. So what happens to so many people as they grow up is if they don't find their chosen community and their chosen tribe, is they start to feel more and more isolated and more lonely. And Radha says that loneliness and isolation is an epidemic in this country. And when you don't have that community, it's like harder for you to live as long and be as happy and be as healthy. And she defines community as a group of 3 or more people with whom you share similar values and interests and where you experience a sense of belonging. So that search to find your true community, to find your true tribe is such an important part of life and what it means to be human and what it means to be happy as a human. And what I really learned from her is that for so many people, community is something that is, if I have time for friendship and for community, then I'll do it. But the truth is that that's not the way to find community sometimes. That really it has to be something that you prioritize, something that you get super intentional about. And when you get intentional about your community, then all of a sudden you can start to cultivate it and start to find it. And that community really requires that level of intentionality and that level of priority and that level of cultivation. And I think that I always thought I would just find my friends. And I haven't always just found my friends, or I found them. But then because of the situations of life, they might have moved away, and we live in such a global, interconnected world where a lot of times people don't stay put in one place for a long time. So I really feel like it's the time in my life where I'm ready to cultivate my tribe, my community, not just the community that I lead for my business, but the community that's gonna nurture me, the community of peers that are the ones that I get to ask for help from, not necessarily just the ones that I give support to. Whether or not you were able to choose your family or the community you grew up in, you've got to recognize that sometimes it's time to move on. That sometimes the people that you've always had as your friends, the community that you've lived in, you may have roots there, but it may not be the community that nurtures you at the deepest level at this point in your life. So you can choose your community, you can choose your tribe, and you can choose your family. And that's takeaway number 1. Now let me tell you about takeaway number 2. And takeaway number 2 is something that Radha calls Fomo. You may have heard of FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. Now, Fomo is the fear of being left out. And we've all had those moments in time where people had a party and you weren't invited, or whatever it happens to be. And honestly, I've had that fear of being left out here when I come to Wisconsin, and it's brought up so much in me. I remember back in 1999, my uncle died in a car accident, and I was in undergrad at the time, and I decided to take a Greyhound bus all the way from Providence, Rhode Island, where I was going to college, to Wisconsin for his funeral because I loved him, I respected him, I wanted to pay my tribute to him. And I was so tired from riding that bus like 30 hours across the country that when I got here, I fell asleep. And I slept straight through the next morning, and my entire family left to the funeral, and no one told me they were going to the funeral. I was staying at their house, they just left without telling me. So I slept through, and when I woke up, I looked at my watch and I was like, oh no, it's time to go. And I had no car, nothing, and so I tried to call everyone in the family, no one picked up their phone. So I ended up walking 3 miles down the road to the funeral, and I was so worked up by the time that I got to the funeral that I got there and I was like, I couldn't stay. I didn't want to create drama at the funeral, but I had to step away because I had so much emotion welling up inside of me of being left out, of having made this huge effort to take a Greyhound across the country and then having no one tell me that it's time to wake up, we're leaving. And I felt this huge wound, this abandonment wound, this belonging wound that even though I made the effort, that no one really cared whether I was there or not. And I remember after that, talking to my dad and talking to my grandma about it and sharing how I felt, because the truth is that I've never really felt like I belonged when I visited. I never really felt like I was welcomed in with open arms, even though it's my own family. And I know I've had those other instances, those fear of being left out, those times where friendships just went whoop because of something that happened, some kind of hurt, some kind of hardship. And to be honest, the lifetime of those kinds of moments ends up building up this fear of being left out, where so many people stop even trying to make friends because they don't want that hurt, they don't want that rejection. And so they think it's better to just be alone than to put all that energy out to the world and maybe be rejected in turn. And what Radha says is that when you really start to address your wounds around Fomo, you can hit JOMO. And JOMO is the joy of missing out. JOMO is what happens when you choose to decline invitations, where you don't say yes to every single thing that people invite you to because you're following your own compass. You know when to be social and you know when to be alone, but you're not doing it by default. You are choosing when to be social and you're choosing when to be alone. And I'm working on getting to that JOMO of choosing my life rather than reacting to it out of fears and rejection and hurt that I'm carrying around from a lifetime of friendships that have come and went for whatever reason. So that's my second takeaway, to really do that inner work of letting go and clearing whatever hurts and wounds. And if you ever feel like you're being left out intentionally, to have those conversations rather than just like sweeping it under the rug and saying, well, whatever, I didn't really care about them anyway, which is what so many people do. So that leads me to the third takeaway. And the third takeaway that Radha talks about is energy. That energy is contagious, and positive energy creates positive community. And really, your ability to make friends, and not just make any friends, but make the friends that you're here to make, the friends that's gonna fill you up, the friends that you want to make, that you want to hang out with, is based on the amount of energy you put out into the world. And she talks about this idea of becoming a fuck yeah friend. And a fuck yeah friend's the one that says hell yes when you invite them to do things, the one that gets excited, the people that say yes all the time. And not the people that shrug and say, whatever, maybe. And I notice it's so common these days. It's like people have become too cool for school, and our lives are so self-important that a lot of times we don't even do people the courtesy of a response when they send you a party invitation. And I see that so often with Facebook party invites, event invites, Evite invites, that the number of people who don't respond is way out of proportion to the number of people who say yes, or even the number of people who say no, that we don't even give each other the courtesy of a response, and we're looking for friends. So for me, it's about becoming that fuck yeah friend. I gotta get the paddle out and go out a little bit more. It's about becoming that fuck yeah friend, really. And really being the kind of person that says, yeah, hell yeah, I'm in. And not just shrugging it out and being like, yeah, whatever, because the shoulder shruggers, they're the kind of people that get left behind. The shoulder shruggers are the ones that are like, yeah, I don't really care that much one way or another, whether we go somewhere or we don't go somewhere. And in addition to that, Rada talks about the importance of what she calls 5 sense friends. And these are friends that are outside of the internet and Facebook, friends that you can be in the real world together. You can be feeling and touching and smelling and tasting and doing these things like eating together, breaking bread together, having meals together, and how important it is to cultivate those friends that you see in the real world. And how often it's easy to kind of pretend that our follower count on Facebook or wherever, Instagram, is our friends, when it's not really. It's the 5 sense friends that really matter, the ones that we're in proximity to, the ones that we share our lives with on a weekly, if not a monthly basis, or sometimes a daily basis, that really matter. And understanding that your energy is contagious and how you're showing up is the first step to building those friends that you want. And so I've started to try to flip the switch, because I've always talked about flipping the switch in business, my pro switch, where no matter how I'm feeling, I flip it and I'm on when that camera turns on, when that webinar goes live, when I step out on the stage. But I have not been flipping the switch for my friends. I haven't been flipping my energy switch when it comes to saying hi to someone, just looking them in the eye, showing up at dinner after I've had a long day of work, and giving my friends as much energy as I've given my business, to really prioritize that. And Rada talks about being a thermostat rather than a thermometer. A thermostat is self-regulating, and a thermometer is just an indicator of everything that's happening outside. So becoming that thermostat to really control your own state and your own energy. So I wanted to share this review of belonging in my 3 takeaways. First, that you don't have to live your life just based on your given family and your given tribe. You can choose family and choose tribe and create it at any given time. 2, you have to understand your fears of being left out, your flow blow, and really address the hurts and the wounds that are stopping you from making new relationships and showing up fully. So then you can start to make the real choice and not be in FOMO or flow blow, but be in JOMO and have the joy of missing out because it's your choice, or the joy of jumping in. And 3, that positive energy is contagious and positive energy creates community. So that is my review of Belong. Find your people, create community, and live a more connected life from the place where I feel like I least belong. But the very interesting thing is, even though I haven't felt like I belonged here in Wisconsin Rapids with the Murgatroyd side of the family, there's actually an island named after me here called Marisa Island, because when I used to visit my grandma here as a girl, I would take these big novels, oftentimes Russian novels, out into the lake with a hammock, and I would just read all day here because I preferred to be alone reading books than trying to have conversation with people who I didn't always felt understood me. So I used to hide out instead of trying to belong and put my energy into books rather than putting my energy into relationships. So no wonder, right? I didn't cultivate the relationships, so that's why I feel like I don't belong. So I know, and on this trip, I've tried to flip that switch again and fully belong here and give to my family here and realize that the relationships I have are based on how I'm showing up and what fears and what projections and what hurt that I'm bringing into it. So I'm practicing flipping that switch so I can be fully present, fully alive, fully energetic here as I would in my business or in the places that I choose to be. So if you want a copy of this book, and I gotta say it is beautiful, beautiful full color images and beautiful illustrations. If you want a signed copy by Rada, leave a comment down below, and whoever leaves the very best comment on this post, I'm gonna mail you a signed copy of this book. And do not read this book on Kindle. It's too beautiful, it's too tactile. You're gonna want to read it in a hard copy because the graphics are just too gorgeous, and you wanna have that physical 5 sense sensation of reading this book. So thank you so much. Leave a comment about this book, leave a comment about belonging or anything that I said. I read every single one of them. I'd love to send you a copy of this. I highly recommend reading it. I've gone into this deep inquiry about what it means to belong and who I want to be my tribe, my chosen tribe moving forward. And I appreciate you for being part of my chosen tribe. So thank you, and go out there and live your message.